So yesterday, I talked about this random Twitch streamer, Victoria DuCharme. It's a very low bar, very vain, bizarre person who likes to make virtue signals on the internet. You know, that sort of person. Calls herself a creative art director, designer, and model, by the way. But she was all offended because apparently she was watching a stream of Fanfan on Twitch. Fanfan, or the chat started saying the word retard. She got all mad about this. She started to cause a scene in Fanfan's chat here. You can see Victoria DuCharme on her Twitch account, Queen Tofu. She takes a screenshot of her own comment, posts it to Twitter as mentioned, really comes off like a clout grab, like a performative virtue signal. Gets even worse from there because she starts crashing out to an insane degree in the replies. Like, she just starts seething and, like, going insane when people criticize her take or point out why she's acting performative. Her exchange with Ellie was especially bizarre because Victoria, out of nowhere, mid-argument, just posts a picture of herself. Like, that's supposed to mean she won the argument or something. And that's part of why I call her a very vain person. Who does that? Like I said yesterday, you don't win the argument because you randomly post a picture of yourself with a ton of makeup on. Like, that's not how this works. Actually made her look even worse, really. Like I said, very vain, performative person. Really quick, I'm going to elaborate on that point, the point of her being vain, in my opinion. You can take a look at her Twitter profile, and some of her most recent tweets are this, and another one I'll show you next. She says, "We're not talking enough about how radiant I look here." And this one, another recent tweet of hers, she quote retweets herself from 2024, where she said the color palettes of Queen Tofu and did like a compilation of herself. And then 2 years later, she quote tweets it on March 20th and says, "We moved on from this too quickly, y'all." She really thinks she's the main character. Like, hey, everyone should be looking at me and talking about me. And how dare people enjoy Fanfan stream? She says the R word. I'm very performative. Why aren't you supporting me instead of Fanfan? Like, oh my gosh, she comes off so fake. It's insane. And look, it's fine to care about your appearance. I would even say, you know, it's a good thing, really. But there's definitely crossing a line. And when you factor all this together, especially how she, like, mid-argument is posting pictures of herself, too, like I said, comes off very vain and just extremely petty, strange behavior from this person. Anyways, that's some quick context for anyone who missed the 10-minute video yesterday, and a little bit of extra content there. Some stuff I brought up in this video that I didn't bring up in that one, but there's also a lot of content in that video that I didn't bring up here. So if you missed that one because they were watching it for the full context, that is to say, we're moving on to the update as Fanfan found out about Victoria, aka Queen Tofu's rage posts, her virtue signals, and she's issued a 2-minute and 17-second response. Let's take a look at what Fanfan has to say.
Oh my god, guys, let me tell, holy shit. Finzi and Imperator linked me a fucking tweet from this dumb bitch on Twitter who's like, I can't watch any big Marvel rival streamers because they're all horrible people for saying retard. Me? Big Marvel rival streamer? Me? Brother. What in the fuck? And then I also got linked a screenshot of one of her tweets, and it was one of her tweets quote retweeting Necros. Necros being like, I don't think people are banning supports because, I don't actually think people are banning supports because they're sexist. I think people are banning supports because supports are strong right now. And her being like, misogyny is everywhere. And I'm like, yeah, that tracks. That fully tracks. That someone who thinks supports being banned is due to sexist reasons would also treat the word retard like the N-word.
All right, let's pause there for a second. This is the tweet that Fanfan is referring to where Victoria had responded to Necros. The context to this is something I also covered about 6 days ago, where Necros responded to this Twitter influencer, Jules, who was trying to make a very bizarre reach of an argument because supports are getting criticism in-game for reasons such as being overtuned. She ignores all that, tries to say it's really just because of sexism and misogyny, which was an insane and out-of-touch virtue signal. So as Fanfan said, Necros responds to Jules, points out why the take is horrible. Turns out Victoria saw that tweet from Necros. By the way, if you don't know Necros, he's a top rival streamer. And Victoria gets all offended, says specifically this: when you open your eyes, misogyny and racism are both so ingrained into every aspect of society, by the way. It's truly inescapable. When someone says we're reaching, it's because they don't want to have to use their eyes to see it. They're comfortable with living in ignorance. The very least we could do is acknowledge the reality that these systems exist. I love how Necros says that these people are reaching. And Victoria's response is to reach even more. Like, dude, we're talking about supports being overtuned in a video game. This is not sexism. This is not misogyny. People like this build a framework where through a lens of everything is problematic, they can always come to a reach like this. She would be able to find the racism in a piece of sand, probably, right? That doesn't make her intellectual. It doesn't make her right. It makes her someone who's always looking to find something problematic to tie into her own rhetoric because she's brain rotted like that.
Oh my god, I can't. But like, calling me a big Marvel rival streamer is also hilarious. Like, this is why I don't fucking stream the game. Community is awful. Oh my god, and another comment was talking about how I never talk about what's going on in the country. In the country. The country. USA. Me. Bitch, I don't care. Like, yeah. She never talks about the issues going on in the country. The only country in the world. Like, come on. Yes, I'm Canadian. Bitch, what country? We never talk about the Vatican. No, I don't talk about Canada either. I don't have to talk about current issues. You just messaged me. You're getting canceled again, by the way. Get ready. I just bitched about it on stream. Absolute retards.
So a pretty base take from Fanfan, but there is one issue with it, and that is her generalization that it's the Rivals community acting like this, when that's really not the case. First of all, most Rivals players are not following this news. Let's establish that. Second of all, of the Rivals players that are following this sort of news, most of them are against Victoria. They disagree with her and her take and the takes of people like her, these virtue signalers. They're heavily disliked. So clearly it's not the Rivals community. Now, of the community, there is a small subsection of people like Victoria who say things like Victoria as well. In other words, these like very obnoxious, fake virtue signaler types. But the thing is, there's a recurring theme through those people as well. On top of them just being a minority in the Rivals community that's not indicative of the larger community, most of those people are actually not even really in the Rivals community. They're actually in the Overwatch community more so. These are largely people that are Overwatch mains. They mainly play Overwatch, and sometimes they play Rivals. So it's more accurate to say like the Overwatch part of the Rivals community acts like this, not the Rivals community acts like this. And even then I have to make a caveat that of course not all Overwatch players are like that either, but that is a more accurate assessment of what's going on here. That aside though, like I mentioned, Fanfan's take was pretty based, pretty good response. Victoria found out about Fanfan's response and she's offended again. I mean, when is this woman not offended? Everything's offensive to her. Wonderful life, huh? Because Victoria retweets this moody person who says in response to Fanfan's response to Victoria in that 2-minute clip that we played a moment ago, saying that she doesn't care about innocent men, women, and children being beaten, murdered, kidnapped, and put into concentration camps is actually beyond evil. Explains why she was so sympathetic towards Zionists. So they're saying this is happening in the United States of America. This is such a gross exaggeration that it's closer to fiction than it is reality. However, there are a number of countries where these horrible things are still occurring frequently. For example, some in the Middle East and many throughout Africa. So it's always very interesting when couch activists like this love to gaslight people about the US and they ignore, or at the very least put significantly less time and energy into discussing where these issues are actually happening. So yeah, that is the update. You saw Fanfan's response and then Victoria's response, which is retweeting someone else's horrible talking points. Let me know what you think about the latest though, and thank you for tuning in. Hope you guys have a lovely rest of your weekend, and I'll see you in the next one.